Hello and welcome to the video. I'm Michael and today we're going to be talking about how to create Lofi Hip Hop in FL Studio, specifically using the new Akai Fire controller. But whether you use FL Studio or not, all of my samples that I'm using in this video are going to be in the description, so they're free to download, so you can follow along with the same drum kit I'm using, and provided you have some sort of piano VST and a bass VST, you should be able to follow along no problem. Lo-fi hip hop is becoming more and more popular these days, and while it is an incredibly broad genre, there's some elements that tie it together. There's elements of the beat and the swing and the groove that can be found across all areas of the genre, whether it's an incredibly positive and uplifting song or a really sort of heartbreaking and emotional one. But anyway, please download those samples for free and let's get right into making this beat. So I'm inside FL Studio 20. I have the channel rack open with my samples and instruments and I'm in step mode. So the first thing when programming these beats is to get the tempo right. So you'll usually start with the tempo and then maybe alter it later. I started with 85, I lowered it to 83 just to make it a little bit more relaxed and easygoing. There's no real rules, just pick something that feels right for the beat. In this case, I'm choosing something that's feeling sort of relaxed, easygoing and happy because that's the style of beat that I want to make today, not something too sad. So I've got my samples loaded, all of these are in the description down below, and let's start programming a beat. I just want to say as well that on my master channel, I have a tape machine emulation just to try and give it a little bit of vibe and hiss. So also on each of my channels, there's quite minimal processing going, usually just a little bit of EQ, you know, with the kick just to roll off the extreme low end and stuff like that. So there's nothing too crazy going on. So let's start programming our beat. I'm going to use the selection encoder to scroll down to the hi-hat channel, and I'm just going to add some hi-hats here. And once these are in, I'm just going to add some swing to the pattern. I'm going to add about maybe 40 or 50% swing, and you'll really see what this does when the other elements start getting added in. So I'm going to scroll back up and go to my kick. I'm going to add the kick and the snare. And you can really add them wherever you want. Keep the snares constant, and just add the kicks wherever you feel you want them. I also have this thing that I call a pre-kick, just here, just for even more groove. Remember that you can mute your channels at any time, and you can solo the channels. I'm going to add another little snare here, just to add even more groove. Now if I take the swing all the way down, you'll hear that it just sounds way too regimented. All the way up, that's way too groovy for me, so let's go back down to about 40% or so. Something you can also do with the Fire hardware, which is really easy, is change the velocities of steps. You can change the volume, pan, filter, all sorts of stuff. But if I want to add some more velocity to the hi-hats, I'm going to just solo this channel here, and I can press and hold a step, or any number of steps, and then just adjust the volume. Just makes it a little bit more human, as though a drummer is actually playing it. Now you can press and hold the steps, or you could go into accent mode, so you can press Shift, accent mode, and then change the default velocity so that the steps, you can just paint them in at a softer velocity like that. I like both, just depends what I want, and the steps usually get a little bit lighter. Let's unmute everything and hear what we've got. Let's change that up a bit. Yeah, I like that. Nice. So again, you're not locked into any particular pattern, just pick something that feels right, feels groovy and good. Now the next thing I'm going to do is kind of lo-fi this whole beat. So I'm going to add a load of hiss and crackling underneath the beat. So what I have is a sample of sort of pop and a hiss here. So one of them sounds like this, very poppy. The other sounds like this. And when they're combined together with the drums, it just helps to add that sort of old school, retro, sort of nostalgic feeling to it. Just paint across the drums quickly, just so we've got a little bit more of a pattern to work with, and let's start programming some chords and melodies. So for this, I'm just going to select a new pattern here, the piano, and I'm going to go into note mode, and I'm going to select the piano from my instruments. Now, if you don't have a piano loaded here, you can just load one. You can use FL keys or any piano that you like using. I'm using addictive keys in this case. It just sounds really aged and almost like nostalgic. just kind of like a really nice sound. The only bad thing is that note mode isn't velocity sensitive yet, might happen in an update. So I'm going to just turn the channel volume down whilst I play it, and then afterwards I'm actually going to reduce the velocity of the notes. When it comes to which chords you use, there are no particular rules, but I've left some information in the description with certain types of chords you might want to use for a certain feeling, but really I just played this until it felt right, so let's just go ahead. And I'm just going to record that in. So what I'm going to do is select Shift, then I'm going to go wait for recording. I'm going to turn on recording, and then press play. And now it's waiting until I press the keys to start recording so that I know that it records at the very start of the pattern. Just like that. In the piano roll, I've just quantized the starts and finish by pressing Control A and Control Q. It just makes it a little bit sharper. And then what I'm also going to do is go into the tools and I'm going to strum the notes slightly, just to add a little bit more of a human feel to them, as though I was playing them again. What I'm also going to do is just take all of the note velocities down so that they sound really nice and soft and lush. And then I'm going to turn the channel volume back up. And then on this channel, using any compressor or EQ you have, I've just given it a bit of a low cut to cut out the boominess, and then I've compressed it just to make it a little bit softer and fatter. So that's starting to sound about right, but we definitely need to put a melody and a sub in here as well. So for the melody, I'm deciding that I'm just going to use the same piano, but I'm just loading it into a new instrument so that it's separate. So I'm going to select the channel, which I've called melody. I'm still going to stay in the grid mode, but I'm just going to navigate to a higher octave. Nice. So this is another piano, but it's got a lot of reverb, just to make it sound really, really pretty, to be honest. So I'm just going to start playing around with some melodies and see what feels right with the beat. Adjust the channel volume if it's too quiet. I'm going to record that in because I quite like it. So what I'm going to do is press Shift and I'm going to give a countdown before recording. And that's all I'm going to do this time. I'm not going to turn the metronome on. I find that it's a little bit more authentic when I play these things a little bit loose. Even if I make mistakes, it tends to just add to the vibe of the song. So let's turn on recording. I'm also just going to navigate to a new pattern here, which is called melody, and see how this goes. So I was definitely a little bit rushed there, a little bit nervous, but that's okay. So what I'm also going to do is press Control A in the piano roll and Control Q just to quantize it a little bit. And then I'm also just going to kind of draw through these velocities a little bit just to make it a little bit different throughout each of the notes. I'm just going to quickly go into mixer mode and hold Shift to select the melody channel and just increase its gain because it's a little bit quiet. You could also change the panning and the low and high EQ actually. That sounds a little bit better now. And again, this beat was all about being a little bit easygoing and happy, and that's just what I'm trying to express with these melodies, I guess. Depending on the emotion of your song, you're going to want different timings, different styles, and it's good to sort of just have a play and see what comes to mind, you know? It's really quite an expressive controller. If you just give the note mode a little bit of a chance, you might be surprised. I'm not a natural keys player, and sometimes a nice melody comes out of it, sometimes a nice chord does. Don't be afraid to just try it. And also with the melodies, if you get stuck on one melody and you don't like it, don't be afraid to just, push it to the side and try a new one. Often with these creative things, the first idea you try isn't always the best one. So don't worry, you've got plenty of time. You're just in your own studio, so it doesn't matter if you come up with a melody that isn't super amazing right away. It's all part of the fun of it, really. So the next thing I want to do is add a sub bass to this, and I'm going to do this with Fire again, although I usually just do this in the piano roll. I'm going to select the channel sub. Now I think I use Serum for this sub, but you can use pretty much any low sine wave, and I've sidechained it to the kick so that it ducks every time. I'll link a sidechaining tutorial just here. But anyway, let's try this. So that's a very high-pitched sub, so let's go down a few octaves using the grid button. That sounds about right. Okay, so I'm just going to navigate to my sub pattern as well, and then let's do a countdown before recording, record, and play. Again, I'm just going to go into that pattern and make sure that it's all quantized close enough. I can probably leave that the way it is. It's not perfect, but that's half the fun of it. So I'm just going to take a listen to what I've got and maybe do a little bit of mixing. Maybe lower that down, make the piano a little bit darker. Nice. So the melody seems like it's a little bit all over the place, so I might want to look at those velocities again. But to be honest, it's all doing okay. So that's really the basics of the lo-fi hip hop, and there's a lot more that can go into it. It usually comes down to having a nice solid beat that's usually quite easy going, but also commands the track a bit. Finding some really nice chords, some lush chords, and then also just trying to do everything you can to make it sound lo-fi and old school. So adding that hiss, adding that vinyl crackle, if you've got any sort of tape simulation plugins or tube emulation plugins, saturation, throw that on there and see how it sounds. And if you find that you're stuck in a 4 or 8 bar loop, I have a video linked just here that gives you some inspiration and tips to try and break out of that loop and arrange this idea into a full song, because this is by no means a full song, this is just a lo-fi beat. But thank you very much for watching. For more tutorials to do with the Fire, please do check out the other videos and playlists on my channel. And for more FL Studio related videos, again, I have many more videos on my channel. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.